back again with another episode of Behind the Numbers. Join me as always, Andrew Wilson, brilliant young pollster, decent kid. There he is. All right, we'll keep him around. And my good friend and our former Lincoln Project colleague and co-founder of the Lincoln Project, Mike Madrid, who is one of the smartest guys when it comes to the numbers that you are going to meet out there. We're going to dive into the broad picture of what's going on, but Mike has got a specialty and really understands the Latino vote in this country better than any other human being I've ever met. And he's going to drill down on some of the ways that coalition Trump thought he had has fallen apart and how we can keep them. So let's get right to it. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming on. Let's get right to where Trump's at on the approvals here. It's working out great.
I saw a comment right as we started that said, give me crashing poll numbers. It sustains me. Here you go. But
you shall have
before we get too deep into this, like, Mike, will you give us a baseline of starting sort of October 2024 till now? What's happened with Latino voters?
Yeah, and it's important that this really began to become visible when Rick, when you and I were working together on the Lincoln Project, and we talk about this late night. Is we were pulling this. Remember, this is 2020. This is when Biden wins, and he wins by a margin smaller than most of the public polling. And our polling was saying, we're winning some of these Republicans that we're targeting with the Lincoln Project, but the Democrats are leaking Latinos a little bit. Yeah. It's putting states like Arizona more in play than they should be. And lo and behold, Trump actually picks up a larger share of the Latino vote in 2020. Nobody noticed it except for us because, fortunately, Biden won, and that we thought was all in the rearview mirror. But the trend line continues. So, Andrew, to your point, in 2024, start ringing the alarm bell and saying, guys, like, this has been happening for a while and nobody's paying attention. It's not like Latinos voted in one election cycle. They've been moving in 3 of the last 4 elections.
Right.
And if Trump does win this thing, he's going to win it with a record share of Latino voters. And unfortunately, that's what happened.
Sure.
The reason why, guys, is because it is really about the economy. I mean, to your point, Rick, you and I have had this conversation ad nauseum.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that immigration doesn't matter. It clearly does, but it doesn't matter by a 2.5 to 1 margin. Most polling today is showing immigration concerns are 2.5 times less important than the economy. Like, things are getting that bad. The desperation is created this large swing voting group in America that's pretty unique between black and white voters. These Latinos that are moving by 25, 35 points in these election cycles year to year, and the country's never really seen anything like that before.
I mean, a part of it, as you've always said, that if we were in a period right now of great economic growth, I think the Democrats would have a hard time getting those Hispanic voters back, getting those Latino voters back. But the failure on the economy, that central promise of why people come here, you're going to build a better life, you're going to build a more prosperous life than wherever you were before. And with Trump, it doesn't feel that way for people now. The immigration stuff's like icing on the economic cake for a lot of these people, in my view.
Look, if Trump had just gone golfing at Mar-a-Lago for 4 years and just, faded into the background, he'd be sitting at, probably 55% approval ratings right now. The fact is, the numbers with Latinos started to crash literally on Liberation Day. It started 3.5 months before the ICE raids in Los Angeles. It starts cratering with Latino voters because it's the economy. And that's what I think people really need to figure out is, after the midterms, and we'll talk about the midterms in a little bit, what's the likeliest scenario. But, the Republicans genuinely had a generational opportunity to create this realignment that some of them were talking about. Now, realignment's a very strong term.
I want to talk about that for sure.
But they did have an opportunity to recast themselves for a new generation of Latinos, and they have completely squandered that opportunity in a way I've never seen a self-owned quite like that.
Right, an own goal. Andrew, go ahead. You had a question.
Well, I mean, my question is really, we'll get to the implications, but the realignment specifically, there's still talked about this to this day. Was it real? How significant was it? And, how do Democrats come back from it? It sounds to me like economic messaging is obviously the best route.
So, Andrew, that's a great question. So, like, look, this began sort of with the Democrats when they used to believe in this concept, this theory called demographics is destiny.
Right.
This really became part of the Obama era thinking, where if all the Democrats would have to do is wait.
Yeah.
Mother Nature and demographics would do its thing. Latinos were born out of the womb 80% Democratic voters. And I was saying, wait, that's not true. Like that's not a real good understanding of the way this ethnic group is voting. And then Republicans make their own mistake based off of the same assumptions, which is they're seeing this rightward shift and they're sticking the data into their own preconceived conclusions. Right. Which is always the danger in this business, is you're not looking at it clean. And so a book came out called Party of the People that suggested there was a racial realignment happening, that now Latinos were born naturally Republicans. It was finally happening. And I was saying, look, there's zero data. There's zero polling data saying Latinos are becoming more Republican, but there's a lot of evidence saying that they're becoming less Democratic. And that's the important distinction. So no, the racial realignment theory, in my opinion, has never been true. It's not a realignment. It's a de-alignment. They're moving away from both parties, and they're truly up for grabs. And one of, I think, the most ironic things at the moment, fellas, is Latinos are rejecting whichever party is doing a bad job in power. And in this country, we're like, why are these voters behaving so peculiarly? But they're voting the way, they're the only voting group that's voting the way you're supposed to vote.
Right. They're voting based on the actual incentives in their lives.
Yes. That's the way the system's designed. And it's like, we're so used to this dysfunction of it. Doesn't matter how bad things get, I'll double down in my tribe.
Right.
Seeing a group actually voting and moving and responding the way they're supposed to and going like, what the hell is wrong with those people? And that's not what's wrong at all.
Why is that? Why is the behavior different for Latinos and just say like white voters? Why is their behavior so much more stubborn?
That's a great question. The answer is Latinos are the least racially polarized voter in America, and they're the least partisan voters in America. They have the fastest tendency to be disaffiliated or move independent and not have a party affiliation. So you see those, and by the way, almost 40% of Latino voters, get this, almost 40% of Latino voters are 30 years of age or younger. So they're of this age where they don't buy the partisan nonsense anyway. Like it's never been part of their reality, which is another reason you can't have a realignment, because they don't have enough of vote history to realign. They're emerging as something totally different. And so if you take Latino working class voters and you compare them to white or black working class voters, both white and black working class voters, the delta, the change in their voting behavior cycle is less than 3%. It will probably be bigger this year because things are collapsing, by the way.
Yeah.
But historically, it's 2 to 3%. Latinos are like 17% right now, guys.
Wow.
We're seeing 25-point swings in special districts elections in Texas. We're seeing 50-point swings in the New Jersey's Passaic County.
Yep.
And by the way, you're seeing it in New York City with the Zoran Mamdani race. You saw it with Mikey Sherrill in Passaic County, New Jersey. You saw it in Manassas County, Virginia with Spanberger. You saw it
in Miami-Dade with the mayor's race.
Miami. So it's like all of the diasporas, all these differences and not monolithic. Right now, guys, Latinos are monolithically anti-Trump and anti-Republican, and I've never seen that before because it's never happened before.
Right. There was always a differentiation between Mexican descent, Cuban descent, all the different, subtext and subgroups had a lot. I mean, as a Cuban friend of mine once said, there's nobody Cubans hate more than other Hispanics.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, but that's right. That's right.
But I don't think that applies right now. I think that has slipped out of the.
There's a brotherhood now. There's a brotherhood where you see. When was last time, Rick, you saw Cuban Republicans criticizing Republican administration on immigration?
Go to Dade County right now, because every single one of them is like, I love Trump, but yeah, I wish Trump wouldn't do this. And Salazar in 27 down in Florida is absolutely in a panic right now because classic conservative Republican Cuban, maybe not as hardcore conservative as other Republicans, but right for the district. But once they said, we're getting rid of TPS and we're sending 300,000 Venezuelans and 150,000 Cubans home by getting rid of TPS. And it's not that those people are her voters, but their families are.
Right.
Yeah.
Their friends are.
Yes.
Their employers are. And most of them, all of them, under the TPS, are here legally.
Yeah.
It really breaks that covenant. And I think that, and again, that gets down to another economic thing. The theory of Stephen Miller is those lazy people who steal all your benefits are also taking your job. Okay, how's that work? I've never understood how that works.
Well, let me give you another piece of hypocrisy. Why are they talking about a racial realignment and then deporting their own voters if they really believe it?
Right.
Like,
right.
if you're really winning the Hispanic vote, why are you kicking them out?
Yeah. And while that's not driving the massive changes, as you point out, that worry is ticking up, and you can see why it's ticking up. Stephen Miller, like military cosplay and actual military usage of ICE, it's everywhere, and that's a community now that, you know, there folks who are here as U.S. citizens or who were here legally or who were naturalized are now they're as scared. I think my theory of the case, at least, they're as scared as people who are not here legally because they're brown and they're
subject to racial profiling. Yeah,
and the racial profiling at ICE is through the roof.
Rick, I've got friends who've been here 3 generations that are carrying their passports now.
I bet.
Yeah, there's no question it's a glue. And like I said, whenever I say this, people go, "Oh, you know, that's just kind of Madrid being Madrid." I'm not saying it's not important. That data right there, I think, is exactly right. Pew Research is the gold standard.
Solid.
So it is no question it is having certainly a motivating effect, but it's also creating this multi-generational, multi-diaspora, like we were just saying. Cubans are now voting like Dominicans, like Mexicans, like Puerto Ricans. Yep. Everybody's voting the same way because we know they're talking about us. Like, you know, they're talking about you, whether you migrated or your grandparents migrated. It's like they don't want us here. They don't want you here, and it is absolutely a motivating factor.
Yeah, and this data point right here, 68% say that the situation in the U.S. 68% Hispanics say the situation in the U.S. has gotten a lot worse. You know, that should scare anyone who was banking on this realignment. And I want to talk about that for a second because it's one of the implications that we've been mulling around. These Texas redistricting efforts, we kind of saw them as predicated on getting that same Trump number with Latino voters. Where do you see that right now?
They weren't kind of predicated on it. They were entirely predicated. 3 of those 5 the Republicans carved out 5 new seats, 5 of them for themselves to you know, take advantage of mid-decade redistricting. 3 of those 5 are Hispanic majority districts.
Right.
And it's all entirely predicated on the idea that they're going to get 45% plus, not only of the vote break, the vote share guys, but also the same level of higher turnout when Trump's on the ballot. That's important to understand. So the Republican, and by the way, they're banking on doing something that the Democrats weren't able to do for 30 years, which is get high turnout amongst the lower propensity male.
Get those 1s and 2s, baby.
Yeah, that's not, even if you could get them to the polls, which no one's ever been able to do that, they're betting on breaking 50-50 with them to get 3 new seats. That's not going to happen. There's a very, very good chance that at least 3 of those 5 go towards the Democrats. 3 of the 5. And here's where it gets really fun. They had to thin out some of their pure ruby red districts to pick up those other seats. So it's not just the 5 seats anymore. They made a whole host of other Texas congressional seats more competitive. And if we start to see the continuing vote break with Latinos that we saw all in 2025 and the early part of this year, you know, Katie bar the door, man. They're in deep shit. Like, I think they lose 3 of those 5. And we're probably going to see a couple of other surprises around the state also that were never intended to be competitive.
Yeah. And I think that the weird shift at the top of the ticket, the vibe. I was out in Houston 2 weeks ago for a speech and met a bunch of meetings. I've never seen Texas Democrats have a more realistic approach. Like with Beto, God love him, and I love him to death, right?
Yeah.
Amazing charisma. But a lot of Democrats were like, well, it'll all just work out. And now these people I'm sitting with were like, here's how we're doing turnout here. Here's how we're going to run it up in Harris County. Here's what we're going to do in the Arrow in Harris County to pull over soft Republicans. Here's what we're doing in the Valley. And the Valley was where I think the Rio Grande Valley was where I think the Trump folks and the Texas Republicans, they looked at those numbers and they just couldn't believe it. And they couldn't believe that it was real. They just ran with it. I mean, that is absolutely, I think, ground zero. All those seats along the Rio Grande, along the borderline, are going to be, I think, in deep shit.
That's the dummy mander. Those are the 3 of 5 seats we're talking about. And just to drive this home to the listeners, Rick and I had a couple of these conversations late in 2020 where I'd be like, Rick, Texas, man, I think we got to take a look at it. He's like, Madrid, get some more sleep. It ain't moving. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Not yet.
So not yet. Yeah, not yet. Give it time. It's coming. But sometimes you gotta. It's very hard in a campaign to look at the data cleanly because you get so focused on it so continually for so many months, you start to lose perspective of it sometimes. So I never remember that. I never forget that time. I remember exactly where we were having a coffee over the dining table. Like, Madrid. Yeah. No. Go focus on Arizona. Go get us Arizona.
Go get us Arizona. But I mean, look, I think that this in Texas in particular, and we'll move on from Texas because we could spend a week on it.
Yeah.
The combination of Tallarico being a top tier campaigner, I mean, of the highest order, of the Obama, Bill Clinton, Reagan tier of campaigner.
Yeah.
And the bloody fight going on between Paxton and Cornyn right now, and Paxton's whole corrupt history. I think if we end up with, even if Tallarico doesn't pull it across the line, it's still going to have a good tailwind effect for all these down ballot races in Texas, where we're seeing like, I interviewed the guy who picked up a state Senate seat a couple weeks ago in a Republican district just by going in and doing town halls like, I know things suck, they're not affordable, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
Wasn't running a typical campaign, just went out and took it. I think there's something changing there, and I think I also think that very solid boomer white Republican boomer voter in Texas, they're clocking out.
Yeah.
They're my dad's age.
And you're saying something really important, Rick, which is important for Texas, but it's also important nationally. There are 3 things going on, and sometimes lightning does have to strike for these big things. Look, That's what happened in '94 when Texas turned red and stayed away from generation. That's how you knocked out an Ann Richards. But first of all, the Democratic base right now, the energy is volcanic.
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
nobody's polling is within 5 to 7 points of accuracy because nobody's weighting how much Democratic turnout and how intense it is. In Texas, during the Tallarico primary, 30% of the Democratic voters had no vote history. People are showing up, they're pissed, they're done. People who are just like normally like this, I don't care about politics, are showing up in droves. So that's one. Democratic turnout is way off the charts. The second is, have you ever seen independent vote breaks, like 25% approval for a president ever?
No, I mean, and in Andrew talks about this. Andrew talks about this all the time. Independents are 2-1 or 3-1 against Trump on every single policy issue.
I've never seen that.
Never. No, that's just wild. So
and third, and here's the kicker. Sorry, Andrew, I'll give it back.
Go ahead.
Republican turnout is depressed.
Yeah.
And so that's how you get 25, 35 points. That's how you lose 25 points in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, by the way, guys.
Yep. That's how you take a red district in Tampa with a state Senate seat because Republicans just were like, nah.
And I brought this up last week, actually, or 2 weeks ago. It's not the generic ballot number that you need to look at. It's voter enthusiasm and intention that's going to really, determine the outcome here.
I don't think there's any other way to explain it. You can't look. You can look at all the polling data, and we all do all day, and that's important. It's necessary. But you also have to look at the ground. You have to look at the terrain on the ground and say, what is happening with actual vote outcomes in the past year? Yeah. And they're overperforming for Democrats by 7, 8, 10 points in most instances, not 1 or 2 anomalous, like all of them.
Like 40 races in the last year and a half in various levels. Democratic overperformance is off the charts.
It's off the charts, brother. And it's not even. And remember, the economy's getting bad. In 2018, Trump loses like 40 seats. The economy was great in 2018.
Yeah.
The economy's terrible right now, and his polling numbers are at a historic low. So Yeah, anybody looking at the data in the last 18 months can't look at Texas and say it's not competitive, it's not in play. It absolutely is.
100%. Andrew?
Yeah, so that's actually a good segue into some of this issue polling. This is from a Unidos US poll. Number one issue, cost of living and inflation. And you apply the logic there, and it's like, the cost of living and inflation is out of control for most people, and of course, Latino voters are not an exception to that. So talk a little about these issues that Latino voters really care a lot about.
Well, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to be a little bit nerdy right here and explain something. So a couple of years ago, Unidos US gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award. They're the largest, oldest Latino civil rights organization in the country. Yeah. They've also been the strongest advocates for immigration. And a lot of times, the way they would do their methodology would show that immigration is usually a bigger issue. You'll notice that four of the top five issues they're all economic pocketbook issues.
Right.
And the reason why this is happening, fellas, is because you have to understand Latinos are the fastest growing segment of the non-college blue-educated blue-collar workforce. That blue-collar worker that we've all been kind of antsy about, and the New York Times goes to diners and tries to understand them better. Why are they shifting their voting? Like, it's becoming Latino far more than it ever has been. Latinos are also 80% of new Latino voters, those turning 18, are U.S. born. So much less of an immigration perspective than just 10, 15 years ago that their parents had. And that's that younger voter we were just talking about. That's less partisan, less ethnically oriented. They're also entering an economy that is just hot garbage. So it's like there's nothing to be hopeful about. And as I mentioned, these 38% of Latino voters that are under 30, you're seeing if this sounds similar to all the data that's being put out on young voters doing the exact same thing as Latinos, it's because there's enormous overlap between these two demographics. It's a young demographic. So when you understand that it is overwhelmingly trying to navigate life in a really bad economy where the prospects don't look good, all of this does start to make sense. Housing, right? When you're in your 20s, that's kind of ideally when you start your first home buying experience. That's increasingly out of reach for so many of these folks. Groceries, all those basics. We kind of laugh sometimes dismissively at the price of eggs voters in the last election cycle. When you're paying 50% of your rent or mortgage, of your income on rent or mortgage, you know what the price of eggs is, man. You know what the price of everything is. Yeah. And so even slight increases have dramatic impacts on your voting behavior.
Yeah. So this poll was actually conducted, I think, around the time that Trump did the Venezuela kidnapping. So we got military deployments here among Latino voters. 69% don't support the way in which the military deployments are occurring. I think that's connected. We can connect that to Iran today. So how do you see Latino voters on that particular issue, on Iran?
I mean, I haven't seen any fresh polling yet, and look, we're going to see a big round next week coming out, and I'm interested because a lot of these things will be fielded, prior to Melania's big announcement, right?
Yeah, whatever that was.
Whatever the hell, I wanted your opinion on what that was going on. But that, look, it's not going to be positive. I can tell you that. It's not negative. What I will also say is this. It's not like this is the straw that broke the camel's back for them. This is going to be a very unpopular war.
Right. It's a focus issue. He's focused on the wrong stuff.
Right.
But it's the right way to look at it is it's another straw thrown on the back of the camel whose back is already broken. Look at it that way. Like it's cooked. It's really just a question of how bad it's going to get. There's really no way to turn this around by November unless somehow we gloriously win the war, the economy completely turns around, Trump decides, you know what, I'm not going to be Trump anymore. I'm going to be a good president.
I'm dropping the tariffs. Yeah.
Stop with the vulgarity. Stop with the tariffs. Stop with the war. He literally, the answer for the Republicans is to do the opposite of everything that Trump is going to double and triple down on in the next few months.
But, even after he says we're going to eliminate an entire civilization, all but about 3 or 4 Republicans in the House were like, cool. That's great. Let's do that. Very few people, even now, even some of them are getting a little nervous. Some of them are playing the I'm an independent game, but it's really hard.
we talked a lot about we talked a lot about Trump. So I'm curious about the Democratic Party because we have some polling here. Now it says 55% of Democratic voters, 55% say the Democratic Party cares about Latino voters, 30% of the same. So, you talked about this, essentially a jump ball with this demographic. What do the Democrats, what is the legwork here? What do they need to do?
So that's a very important data point. And I really want to stress this, that 55% number, it's a lot lower than it was 10 or 15 years ago. That number used to kiss 20 or 60, excuse me. Sometimes it would get up into the 63 area. We're seeing about a 10-point broadly national drop. In states like California and Texas, sometimes it's even bigger. So what this really means, guys, is this. There's a trust deficit with the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. It's not that Latinos don't believe that the Democratic Party best represents their values or that they care about them. They do. Not by the margins we used to see, but they do believe. Right. The problem is they don't believe they're actually going to do anything that's going to meaningfully change their lives. And in some ways, that's a bigger problem. Because I'm hearing what you're saying, and you're telling me what I want to hear, but I don't believe that you're going to actually do anything or change anything.
And that's key to the Dealignment you talked about, right?
Exactly right, Andrew. And that's the key to fixing it. And this problem, look, the Democrats are going to do very well with Latinos in November. They're going to have a lot of work to do on making a change heading into the 28 cycle, because recent history would suggest that even though Latinos will break strongly anti-Republican towards the Democratic Party, keeping them there is going to be a trick.
Yeah, and if the Democrats don't get locked in on economic questions in the next year, when they take power again, and start, my suggestion to them has always been from the beginning, like, getting rid of the tariffs a big economic thing that will juice the markets. It will make people happy. They will see real impact in their lives of things getting less expensive again. We had a great chart of the impact of the tariffs somewhere in the deck.
We do.
But that question, I think you're so right. It's like, will the Democrats do the things that are necessary and not just assume, oh, there we go. Go. And I think you could map everybody's disapproval pretty much along this line. Yeah. But, none of this had to happen. And if Democrats can say, we're going to reverse these tariffs, we're going to make sure the president cannot do this anymore, I think you'd see an immediate linkage in the minds of not just Hispanic voters, but all voters, that the Democrats figured out an economic question that 90% of the country is with them on for once.
Well, my big dream is that the Democrats would just start attacking this as a Trump tax. But maybe that's the old Republican in me, but it's like Democrats kind of can't do that for whatever. Mentally they can't cross that hurdle, but that would move them and start to center them in the mind of the working class.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, it doesn't cost them anything ideologically with their own people.
And they're even talking about tax cuts now. So
but I do think that's right. I think it's a way to signal and then deliver on the signal for the Democrats that hey, we get it, we know what we're going to fix. We're not going to come in here and try to do gender neutral bathroom bill day one. We're going to do get rid of the tariffs day one. We're going to do fix your life day one. We're going to do help your economic fortunes day one.
It tells the voter that they're serious and should be taken seriously on the economy. Which is really the brand problem that they have, as they're so perceived as this culturally driven party now. That it's Clinton, it's the economy, stupid. They've got to get back with a bite-sized way the average voter can say, okay, they're serious about the economy, and these tariffs are so unpopular. Everything the guy's doing is unpopular. Everything, as you pointed out, Andrew, but. The tariffs are particularly unpopular.
Poison.
And look at the industries that are most directly impacted.
Oh, yeah.
It's manufacturing. It's agriculture. It's
construction.
Construction. It's all of the jobs that Latinos are disproportionately employed in.
Yep.
And even import-export goods. That's all that Rio Grande Valley. That area is just decimated by tariffs. And it's just like, guys, the Democrats have this huge opportunity. And I'm just like, every day, today's going to be the day they're going to figure it out and just start railing on them on tariffs. And look, the good news, like I said, is there's so many things to beat them up on. There's no more bad choices. Like, you want to hit them on the war, hit them on the war. You want to hit them on the economy or being erratic or taking on NATO, have at it. Just attack.
There's just there's an embarrassment of riches of attack vectors here.
Yeah.
So, well, Andrew, you got any more questions today for Mike? We're coming up on time.
I don't think so, actually. Well, actually, one thing I did want to ask about, we touched on this just a little bit about younger voters, and we talk a lot about young men. Give us your read on young Latino men coming into this election.
The key, and look, if you look at that other chart on costs, when you start looking at what they're impacted by, nobody is impacted more by the price of gas demographically in this country than young Latino men. The reason why this is a blue collar worker that's driving a truck to work, to the construction site, to the manufacturing facility, these are the folks that are paying the highest and the most hurt by gas prices. And by the way, these are the folks that are the most, that, we're struggling with inflationary pressures under Biden-Harris.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's the same reason that's going to be bringing them back. The Democrats have a really good opportunity that you don't get very often in politics, which is an immediate second chance. My hope is that they don't lose these guys, but it's not. And look, these guys swinging hammers, they're not listening to ranchera and corridos on the construction site. They're listening to Joe Rogan. These are US-born dudes, man. They're listening to the same stuff as their white counterparts. Do they feel that pressure of the anti-Latino sentiment? 100% they do. You throw that on top of the fact that he failed on gas. A lot of these guys are worried about being signed up for a draft in the war that's coming, right? Or just seeing the overall chaos of what's going on. And you've got this voter that's just, like I said, there was never any data saying they're becoming more Trumpy. None. There's a lot saying they're becoming anti-democratic. That's a very different fix. And it is completely fixable.
Yep. Well, Mike Madrid, thank you, my friend, as always. Fabulous.
I feel like I learned a lot today. That's a good feeling.
All right. There you go.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I love it, man. We'll do it again. We will do it again.
Care,
all right. Thanks so much. And folks, thanks for watching today. We really appreciate you tuning in. And as always, do me a big fat favor and like and subscribe on all the platforms that you watch or listen to us on. Thanks, folks. We'll see you again next